everybody, and welcome to another exciting, fun-filled, expeditious episode of Radiorama, where, as the name implies, I show you how to work on radios mostly, but also other things that run on glowing vacuum tubes from the 1930s through about the 1960s. And today we have this Delco AA5, and I cannot remember what the model number is. Delco model R-1238. Now here's this thing. You think, oh, the knobs are missing. No, they're in the case. So the funny story about this is that I restored this same model in the same case maybe about 7 or 8 months ago. I might have even made an episode about this. I can't remember at this point. And we had an auction, and a red one of these showed up, and it wasn't electrically overhauled. And one of the guys decided, well, we've got this other one that's already restored. Let's swap chassis. So that's what happened. And this sat around for a while with the original price tag we had on it. And then a visitor came in and saw it and just, oh, they loved it. And they wanted to really have it. And they called me up because they know I work on most of these AA5s. And I gave the lowdown. It's like, it's not restored. Like, it's got unrestored chassis in it. But anyway, the customer, well, not the customer, I'm sorry. The visitor was really interested in it and said he would be happy to wait if someone could restore it. So I'm going to restore the same thing again. And I think it actually still works, and if I remember correctly, it might be working with original components. Certainly working in with the original cord, which is in not good shape. It is barely rubber anymore. That's one step away from being a fire hazard. I'm not going to fire it up because it's more or less sold, and I don't want to, even though it's minimal, I don't want to risk any sort of damage that could happen if there's anything wrong that I missed. So let me pull it out. Well, I realize now looking at it, there's no way that I know what the actual state of this is, because if I had restored it recently, this would be a lot cleaner, because I always clean the tubes and clean the chassis. And there's a cover on the bottom, so I can't immediately look inside. So let's take the screws off and see what's inside. Check that out. It's almost a shame to restore this. I mean, look at that. I had a hard time getting that bottom off because it was just real tight. This thing has not seen the light of day since it came out of that factory. And again, I said I think it actually still works. Well, maybe, let's see. How about this one? Nope, I was wrong. This has been replaced, but still, the rest of it's original. So I guess I'm not surprised that it still works, because this is probably a much later replacement. Could be a 50s or 60s era capacitor. And from the looks of it, it's been kept somewhere. It's not been kept in a barn. And there's no corrosion, so that gives me a feeling it's been out here on the West Coast its entire life, because it's so dry out here. And the weather's pretty mild, so it tends to preserve things a little better. So first thing first is going to be replacing these two capacitors. There's probably a value written on it, but you can probably just put two 50 microfarad capacitors in there and call it a day. In fact, that's what this even says on here, 50 and 50. And our black wire is going to be our common negative. And that's coming off the other side of the switch, well, I guess the switch. And then that's going through this big fat capacitor here. So that means this is a floating chassis. That's not a hot chassis. If I'd seen one side of this instead going directly to the chassis, then it'd be a hot chassis. Still, that's a rather large value. That's probably going to be either a tenth or maybe in 2/10 of a microfarad. And if you were to touch that and ground at the same time, which granted, it's got a fairly decent back, it probably wouldn't kill you, but you probably wouldn't be happy either. It'd hurt. I'm not advising anyone to do that, but this needs to go, and it needs to be replaced with a different type and a different value capacitor. But I tend to replace the electrolytics first, then I'll probably replace that cap and then bring it up on the Variac and see if it still works, which it should, unless I do something stupid, which is very frequent actually. Okay, so first of all, here's the across the line cap. And here is the to the ground cap, that blue guy. That is an X2Y2 across the line cap. That piece of cardboard has fallen over. I need to take that out. And then we have our two new electrolytic capacitors. So the set's already on, and I'm going to go over here and bring it up slowly on my Variac. I really need to reorganize my shop so I don't have crap like sitting all over the place. I probably wouldn't be drawing much. I've had the worst problems with this stupid Variac. It's registering like zilch. Unless the radio just doesn't work, period, because this pilot light's on. Why is it not drawing anything? Well, it sounds like it might be working anyway. Let's see. But that does not sound healthy.
And the K-12 school is dual accredited by ACSI and WA.
Picks it off a screen by Jackson. Screen roll to...
You know what I'm going to have to do? I'm going to have to put another cap across there. Right now it's 0.01 microfarad versus what was in there, which was probably like, who knows what. I didn't really look at it. A big one. And so now it's kind of on the bleeding edge of kind of oscillating a little bit.
These are sought by families and small businesses throughout.
Yeah, that's a problem. Do an experiment here. Maybe I shouldn't do this. I was about to reach in there and like touch that with this, but I realized that cardboard there, and also that's a really bad example to set in these videos. But I think that's the problem. But otherwise, it'll work fine. So what I need to do is replace the rest of these little capacitors, and the values are almost always written on them. Like this one, it says 0.005 rated at 600 volts, and that says 0.05 rated at 200 volts, and this says some other stuff on it. Sometimes you got to twist them around to see what they are. And, you know, if you get lost or it doesn't have parts on it, you can download the schematic. A lot of people think you absolutely have to have a schematic, but if you've worked on 5 billion AA5s like I have, they start to look all the same. And so, I don't know. Usually the values are similar across all these different AA5s. So once you've seen a couple hundred of them, you've seen most of them. Come on, knock on your door. We've been waiting for you. Come on, knock on your door. Okay, so rest of the capacitors were replaced in this otherwise very basic, simple radio. I feel like I still need to get this cardboard out of there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to first of all clean the volume pot. You can do that by getting a little contact cleaner. Even though secretly I'm using WD-40 because I ran out of contact cleaner. Doesn't really matter on these radios, it's fine. You will not hurt anything. I'm going to flip it over. I'm going to clean the top of the chassis. Also take the tubes out of their sockets. Clean them. Clean their sockets. Also lubricate the tuning mechanism. And then we'll test it. And if it's still on the verge of oscillating, then I'll need to add another capacitor over the top of that to the ground cap that I installed. It's one of the blue guys. Alright, so let's go ahead and try it out. Let's see what happens. Which is, I get a feeling it's probably going to be on the bleeding edge of oscillating to possibly oscillating, which will be unsatisfactory.
And he was hiding in the children's scripture.
That's not going to work. So I think I'm out of the across the line caps, but I think I'll stick one in just to make sure it fixes the problem. And before I finish it up, I'll put another across the line cap across that first one. So let me see if that'll fix it. All right, well, I stuck another capacitor over the top of that one.
Same 7 first.
Man, it still is not like that. Let me do something here real quick. Crap. This is why I don't have my own cable show yet. Probably never will. Alright, do not do what I'm about to do. Yep, I can tell already. That's a big difference.
Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners now and at the hour of our death. Amen.
Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou.
Well, I'm going to put one more 0.01 over the top of that and see if that fixes it. I don't understand why this thing is so twitchy. You know what? Before I do that, let me see if this thing's just really badly out of alignment. Maybe that's just a problem. Alright, it was just out of alignment. I just tweaked this guy a little bit. It's just off a little bit.
On there, and you said
ਸਫ਼ਰ ਜੋ ਅੱਜ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਆ ਨਾ ਇਹ ਅੱਗੇ ਆਉਣਾ ਆ ਕਿ ਨਹੀਂ ਐਦਾਂ ਨਹੀਂ ਐਦਾਂ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਸੀ ਜੋ ਲਿਖਿਆ ਗਿਆ ਉਹ ਤਾਂ ਬਹੁਤ ਪੁਰਾਣਾ ਆ ਪਰ ਆ ਅਸੀਂ ਦੇਖਿਆ ਜੀ ਸਾਡੀ ਜ਼ਿੰਦਗੀ 'ਚ ਆ ਹੋਇਆ ਆ ਦੇਖਿਆ ਅਸੀਂ ਇਹ ਇਤਿਹਾਸ ਹੈ ਇਹ ਇਤਿਹਾਸ ਹੈ ਇਹ ਅਸੀਂ ਬਣਾ ਰਹੇ ਹਾਂ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਸੋ ਇਸ ਕਰਕੇ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਆ ਕਿ ਸਿੱਧੇ ਰਸਤੇ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਚੱਲ ਜਾਣਾ ਚਾਹੀਦਾ ਰਾਣੀ ਜੀ ਸਵਾਲ ਥੈਂਕ ਯੂ ਸੁਰਿੰਦਰ ਜੀ ਸਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਜੁੜੇ ਹੋਏ ਨੇ ਸੁਰਿੰਦਰ ਜੀ ਸਤਿ ਸ਼੍ਰੀ ਅਕਾਲ ਸੁਰਿੰਦਰ ਜੀ ਅੱਛਾ ਜਸਵਿੰਦਰ ਜੀ ਇੱਕ ਮਿੰਟ ਹੋਲਡ ਕਰਿਓ ਇੱਕ ਮਿੰਟ ਹੋਲਡ ਕਰਿਓ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਕੋਲੇ ਹੁੰਦੇ ਆ ਅਬੇ ਕਰੋ ਹਾਂਜੀ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕਾ ਖਾਲਸਾ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ ਹਾਂਜੀ ਮੈਂ ਦੁਬਾਰਾ ਆਇਆ
建议把椅子侧
Then join us tomorrow.
Yes.
Together in the Chevy of your choice. Current Chevy owners.
It's over. A voting rights group found it. To some random thing you've missed. This college man.
I think that's it. We just needed another capacitor over the top of that second one. Maybe not even that. No, I don't know. It's very twitchy. I'm going to put a second capacitor over that when I get one. But there's one more thing I need to do here, which is oil the bearings in the tuning capacitor. Seems like a strange thing to say, oil your bearings. All right, in your tuning capacitor. Man, we lost one of my favorite filmmakers. He was my favorite filmmaker when I was in high school and through college at least. David Lynch. What an example of a truly creative person who was successful just being themselves. Anyway, you can see how much nicer that turns. I guess you can't really tell, but to me it feels nicer. It's just smoother. Likewise, you'll just put a little smidgen on the input shaft for the volume control. Control it around a little bit. And while I'm in here, I will usually get a really soft brush and just go over the speaker. Usually there's some dust bunnies down at the bottom too. There we go. And
Pray for us sinners.
perfect. Radio's working great. The owner does want to have an audio input capability, so I'm going to go ahead and add that next. The case is actually in pretty good shape. I'll probably just clean it up a little bit and that'll be it. So this is not This thing is in remarkably good condition. I mean, look how clean that is. It's unusual that it had these copper sheets here, but I think that's factory as well. I don't remember seeing too many Delco radios. Like there's the ribbon candy one and a few others, and that's it. I think maybe because General Motors bought them, so most of their stuff was going in the cars and not in consumer radios. Okay, so let's begin by adding the audio input feature. And what I'm going to do is run a cable into the set's existing volume control. And that's this thing here with the drum. And what that's going to enable you to do is listen to either your music through your device or whatever audio you want to play through it, or you can use the radio as was intended. So it's kind of like an add-on. Some people make a big stink about it, but the truth of the matter is even a lot of radios like this from the 30s, even dating back to the 30s, came with phono connections, and you could plug in a record player, and there was a little switch that came with the phono jacked often that disconnected the radio signal. And the problem with that is who knows how safe that was. I can tell you one thing, oftentimes it's not very safe at all. When you have one end of the line of a chassis going to, your incoming AC power from your outlet, and you touch the wrong side, like you can get a jolt. And a lot of people did. Even if you have a capacitor in there between that and ground, you get a little bit of a jolt. Now, what we've put in there now, that 0.02 total combined capacitance, is probably going to give you a little bit of an uncomfortable tingle. Like it wouldn't be pleasant to hold on to, and I'm not advocating for anyone doing that, by the way. That's why there's a disclaimer at the front of my videos. But anyway, long story short, yes, a lot of these came with audio inputs in the form of a phonograph. We're just going to do the same thing to this radio, and we'll need to run a audio cable in, and usually I go in through the back and use one of the existing holes or another hole, but instead I'm going to put one right here because it's kind of far away from all this other stuff, and put a little rubber grommet here. So you see how there's a bunch of other holes already in the chassis. I'm just going to add another one right there, and then that will be our audio that will run through one of these guys, an isolation transformer. And so that's important because I'll explain in just a minute. Well, I'll be honest, I just did not feel like working on this last evening, and I'm not sure if I'll keep that rant in or not. But if I did, I'm sure I lost a lot of viewers just now. But you know what? That's okay, because I'm just doing this partially for my self-enjoyment, and also hoping that maybe the few that watch will get something out of it and maybe learn. Because I started doing this and I didn't know what I was doing. Still don't know what I'm doing a lot of the times, but you got to start somewhere. So now the customer, as I'd mentioned, wanted to add an audio input feature. So last night I drilled this small hole here and ran a little rubber grommet. This is aluminum too, so it's a lot easier. And we'll put this isolation transformer probably right there, or maybe just out a little bit, but we'll glue it in there, and then this audio cable will come through the secondary side of the ISO right here. The primary side goes to the volume control, and you'll see these guys have three legs. There's a top, center, and a bottom. Actually, we call them a top, bottom, and a center. The top is where your radio signal comes in. And on this one, it's not as difficult to tell which one, because you've already got this line going off to this IF transformer. And the bottom one goes to the floating ground. Easy. But the thing that we will need to do here is make sure that the future owner can turn the radio signal on and off so it doesn't pollute their audio. Likewise, if they wanted to listen to AM radio and not audio, they can do that as well. And there's a few things that'll need to happen before this gets installed, namely in the form of some capacitors and resistors and some other stuff. And I'll get into that in just a minute. But what we found was that leaving these in was causing a problem with the audio quality of the radio. I'm not sure why, but we found that if we put a little shunt between this and that solved the issue. So let me go ahead and get all the guts and parts out that I need to make that happen, and we'll go ahead and install that. Okay, so here's how you hook up these transformers. You're probably wondering why is there green tape wrapped around that, but I'll explain that in just a minute. Anyhow, here's our incoming audio cable, and I tied a knot here so you can't like yank it through that. I tend to also put a little drop of glue on that knot so you can't push it forward either. And so what I do is I run on my right and left channels of my audio through a pair of little resistors. You got 33 ohm resistors. Doesn't really matter the resistance. You can put 50 in there, whatever. Just a low resistance. And those tie together. And then the ground of your audio cable goes to the other side of the secondary side of this isolation transformer. I know I've said that a bunch. Isolation. Now, the other side is what goes to the volume control here. And underneath that bulge here, there's a 0.02 rated microfarad cap, and that's connected in series with a 270k resistor, which is approximately half the value of the resistance of this pot. And what that's going to do is provide a little bit of a shunt so that this transformer is not going to interfere with the radio. And then the other side of the primary will go to either chassis or floating ground. So I'm waiting for this glue gun to get hot, because what I do is I will kind of seat this stuff in glue so it's not gonna, if this were to ever break free, you wouldn't have possible other things to like arc across that, which would be very bad. So it's just, I know a lot of people are like, that looks gross, but it's just, I don't know. I want to make sure this is going to be long-term, reliable, and safe. So, whatever. Alrighty, here is the audio installed, audio input rather. And we have this knot tied in this cord so that it can go through that grommet right there. And I'll put a little glue in there to prevent that from wiggling around. What I do is I put a little tape around the top of the isolation transformer, and then I fill it full of hot glue so that all the components are protected. And then we have the wire here disconnected from the RF can, and now it's reverted back to my other Bluetooth. But anyway, let's see if I can bring this back. Alright, now let's try it. So I can control the volume with the volume control, and this is the safest way to do it. This assures you that you're not going to have any potential current getting through that cable, because you don't want anyone doing this and touching ground and getting shocked. That would be a big unfortunate thing. So now what I'm going to do is run the switch wire out the back, and then it'll be time to do some reassembly, and I think this guy will be done. Alright, so we've got the audio running through now. Whoops, there it is. Put a little dab of glue there so you can't jank that out of there. And also ran the switch wire in the back so I can turn the radio signal on and off. See? Anyway, I've got the Bluetooth running through here. When I put this back on radio.
That brings the talents to I just...
You know what? That's a super sensitive radio. It's a 5-tuber too. Like I said, it's sometimes you get these AA5s and the circuitry design is better than others. And it seems like this is a very sensitive set. On the other hand, I've had some AA5s that are just crap, no matter what you do to them. Then again, I'm not an engineer, so maybe I would have seen something obvious. But the electronics part of this is done. I think all it's left to do is just put it back in the cabinet. Just want to make sure that there's no dirt in the pot here.
The sea for Bay Route research and
dang, that's a good radio. Real good. I like that. Anyway, I'm going to put it back in the cabinet here, and then we will call it done.
There is a cabin on a hill, not far from Uncle Vestal's still.
Oh boy, that's right. We're gonna hang out at Uncle Lester's still. They did a lot of that stuff in my neck of the woods, except it wasn't as glamorous as these country songs would have you make it to be out. Anyway, we have the little switch in the back so that we can turn the radio signal back on.
Control and prevention.
He's dumping energy while he's...
Anyway, great little radio. I think the customer's really going to love this thing. And it's really well designed. So anyway, that concludes this episode of Radiorama. Thank you so much for watching. And until the next time something comes across my workbench. I'll see you guys later. Bye-bye.